But first, the Insurance Council of Australia on Wednesday declared an insurance catastrophe for regions of Victoria, Tasmania and New South Wales that have been affected by flooding since the 12th of October. The declaration allows claims to be fast-tracked by insurers. More than 6,300 insurance claims have already been lodged and plenty more are expected to come in over the next few days. Business reporter Ingrid Willinge wraps up this devastating event.
In late February, the biggest flood on record hit the northern rivers in New South Wales and southeast Queensland. The effects devastating. The most basic of needs, homes, electricity, water, roads, all inaccessible, destroyed. Now we are seeing history repeat itself in Victoria, and heavy rain has continued over southern New South Wales and northern parts of Tasmania, with more widespread flooding. The estimated damage bill, more than $5 billion and counting, according to the Insurance Council of Australia Chief Executive and Executive Director Andrew Hall.
Well, in terms of dollars, the dollars that we've tracked since March and the floods that occurred in southeast Queensland was sitting $5.3 billion in claims. These last set of events that have occurred across Victoria, northern Tasmania and the like have generated around about 7,500 claims. It's still early days though, and we're getting a couple more thousand claims a day come in, and I expect that will add to the overall tally of La Niña for 2022.
The rebuild effort is long and arduous. Biz Rebuild's patron, Sir Peter Cosgrove, observes just how relentless it's been for communities.
Well, it's just, I think some fella said deja vu all over again. It's when will the natural disasters cease to impact these communities? And, you know, Lismore, we're still rehabilitating there and they're getting more rain.
Every time we get a shower of rain, people are suffering anxiety and you know, I'm 51 years old and you're sort of expected to get on with things and move forward, but it is a very real situation up here where people, and I'm not talking about 100 people, there are thousands of people still living in houses that we would deem uninhabitable.
So what's caused this record-breaking disaster? Experts say a highly unusual combination of weather events, 2 consecutive La Niña weather systems, which usually cause extreme rainfall, and now a third in sight. Insurers are on watch for even more potential flooding events.
The La Niña weather pattern has obviously conspired to create some abnormality in terms of the actual claims outcomes, the flooding that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years. So we put aside over $1.1 billion in terms of our allowances, and as you know, we've got a very strong reinsurance program sitting around it to provide the sort of protection that we need and that we need to then provide onwards to our customers.
The impacts are far-reaching. The agriculture sector often hit the hardest when it comes to natural disaster. It's an industry that's always had it tough. Weather, supply chain, COVID and staff shortages, now flooding.
It's a really hard situation. The farmers and the regional communities are really heavily impacted at the moment. It's not just floods from the current time, it's also ongoing impact of COVID and cost of production that's really impacting farmers around the country.
And it's not just this year's harvest that's impacted. It has ramifications for seasons to come, with delays to planting schedules.
Well, on the East Coast, it has been substantial, and up to this point, the biggest problem areas have been around central New South Wales. So they had issues at planting. There was farmers replanting crops 3 times earlier this year. Then moving into the growing season itself, there were issues throughout that as well due to excessive rain. And then when you think, oh, it can't get any worse, then you have these significant issues coming right into harvest. So even before these rainfall events, on average in New South Wales, we were expecting only 85% of the crop areas that were planted to actually be harvested. And now that's likely going south towards, maybe 80%.
It also impacts infrastructure like roads, water supply, other essentials, meaning it's impossible to get on with business. It's a waiting game.
When you look at vegetable crops, they tend to operate on a sort of 12 to 16 week growing cycle. So depending how far along the growing cycle the crop was in the ground, they may be salvaged, which would be really good, and there might just be a little bit of a delay in getting that through to harvest. But if you need to replant and go through that growth cycle again, not only do you have the growth cycle of the plant, but you also need to wait for the ground to clear up so you can get tractors and machinery onto the ground to prepare the paddocks.
7 months down the track in Lismore, rebuilding is still getting underway, with some industries faring better than others.
Yeah, it's obviously not as fast as we'd like it to be. We're still waiting on some major announcements to come forward, mainly in the residential space. You know, a lot of our businesses are pretty flood resilient, and our industrial estates back up and running, not to full capacity, but it's going pretty well. A lot of our industries are getting back on track.
Getting claims paid out is another obstacle, the process taking time as insurers are inundated with claim requests.
But they are being processed. But we have seen rebuild times, for example, that normally took around about 12 months. We're now seeing them extend out to 14 months. And that's not in the interest of consumers, it's not in the interest of insurers. So we're doing everything we possibly can at the moment to increase the resourcing in that sector.
The rebuilding process is long, and there is a strong reliance on government to assist. In the current Victorian floods, we heard from Premier Dan Andrews on supporting what he calls the food bowl of the economy.
Our agriculture sector is such an important part of our economic outlook, our prospects, so important to communities flood affected and indeed well and truly beyond. This is the food bowl of our nation, and we'll stand with every farmer, every primary producer, everybody in the agriculture supply chain at this really difficult time.
Small business has taken a sizable hit. Enter Biz Rebuild, a charity run by the Business Council of Australia that works independently of the government to provide instant and immediate assistance to business in need.
We're a fast-moving charity, but we aim ourselves at businesses. What we do as soon as we can, we make the assessments about who needs urgent help, and then we provide immediately cash grants for various things. For the rehabilitation of businesses, a voucher of $2,000 or $500, depending on the sort of expenditure needed. We can walk up to somebody who is in desperate stakes, needing to get a cash injection to buy essential office tools or to re-equip in some way, and we can give them a voucher for a couple of thousand with just very scant checking. So long as they're in a disaster area, so long as they're needy, we can help.
The sector still doing it tough in the Northern Rivers region, and it's a years-long process.
In this financial year till June 23, we're looking at losing $403 million out of our Lismore City economy. And when you consider that 85% of our businesses in Lismore are small businesses, that's a massive hit.
The rebuild process, though, is helping to boost spirits on the ground, helping to get the business community back up and running.
Businesses are the glue of the communities. So when an individual is down and out, they need the familiar and necessary support of the local businesses who provide the stuff of life ordinarily. We've got to make sure that we don't fragment communities by businesses having to close their doors and keep them closed. That's the last card in the pack. So we know that if we can help businesses back onto their feet as quickly as possible, that only helps the wider community. You mentioned Lismore, and we were hopefully pretty quick, and we're still helping in Lismore. $2.2 million in those recent floods, and here we are again with floods, but $2.2 million over 34 New South Wales local government areas and 14 in Queensland. So we were pretty busy then, and we're proposing to get busy again once a disaster has been notified. That's a step that governments take, and then we're in there.
So with billions already spent this year on the flood recovery, can our insurers stomach a third potential disaster this upcoming wet season?
Well, the insurance industry is well managed prudentially, and this is what insurance is designed for when these events do happen. But it does have an effect, it does have an impact on the system. Out of the, I think, $60-odd billion of premiums that are collected over the last 12 months, insurers collectively across Australia made only about $900 million in profit. So when you compare that to other sectors, it shows that at the moment insurers are in a very high payout ratio because of all of these events. And it's not just the big ones that are grabbing all the news headlines. This weather event has been persisting now for 6 months. This does have a cumulative impact on insurers. and it's one where they've got the reserves to deal with it, as well as reinsurance treaties and the like.
This week we've heard from Insurance Australia Group, which says due to the floods and the higher reinsurance costs, it will be increasing premiums across home, motor and commercial insurance classes. And it will not be the only one.
Very much the last 2 years and the end of this year have been very much La Niña weather. We expect that to be an environment where we would exceed our allowances. Unfortunately, we've had 3 of them in a row, and we'd hope that going forward that we would get back to more normal conditions, and that would see us sort of actual outcomes sitting well within those allowances.